The Supreme Court doesn't know what it's just done. Today, the Supreme Court ruled to limit the power of lower courts to issue nationwide injunctions. Now, some of you might ask, how was this even brought about? Donald Trump has been signing executive order after executive order after executive order, many of which have come out to be flat out unconstitutional. And lower courts have been issuing nationwide injunctions to put a pause on these executive orders until everything is sorted out in court. Not too long ago, Donald Trump signed an executive order that would effectively end birthright citizenship. There was a nationwide injunction against it because it's flat out unconstitutional. And so Donald Trump took it up to the Supreme Court. And they did not argue about the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. This case was merely about lower courts being able to put pauses on executive orders. So essentially, with the Supreme Court's ruling, Donald Trump can issue this executive order ending birthright citizenship, upend millions of Americans' lives until the Supreme Court rules on the constitutionality of upending birthright citizenship. So to my Republicans who may be jumping for joy over this, I want you to think about something. If a Democrat gets in office and they start signing a bunch of executive orders to flood the courts, as Donald Trump has been doing, and one of those executive orders says all guns in the United States of America must be banned, lower courts cannot put a pause on it. And if the courts are already full with a bunch of cases that may be unconstitutional, it's going to take time for that to get to the Supreme Court, doing damage to the American system and democracy. And so now Donald Trump can implement this executive order to upend birthright citizenship, and for the foreseeable future, until the Supreme Court actually rules on that very key portion, people's lives will be upended. Folks, this is how a dictatorship begins. This is how the great American experiment goes wrong. There will be massive negative implications for the Supreme Court's decision today.
I'm sorry. I can't believe that we are asking the question, is the 14th Amendment to the Constitution constitutional? That is what, it is crazy. And I am sorry, but people need to call, this is crazy. They're asking us not to believe our own eyes and our own ears. They're asking us to go against everything that we know to be true. This is insane.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Well, I'm hoping that you're doing great from wherever you're watching me from. As you know, I'm your host and presenter, Eugene Stories. Well, I'm hoping that you're doing fine. Now, Mr. Donald Trump is threatening to take the birthright citizenship. And this has a lot of implication because it was indicated in the 14th Amendment, stating that black people, generally a person who is born in the United States, is a United States citizen. If your parents are born in the United States, you are United States citizens. But they were not trying to change these, because the main issue with the Supreme Court ruling is possibly reinterpreting the birthright citizenship that is threatening to take away the automatic right to citizenship for people born in the US, especially children of undocumented immigrants. This matters because birthright citizenship is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, which was created after slavery to make sure that black people were legally recognized as full citizens. If the court weakens or changes this rule, this is opening doors to denying citizenship to people born in the US, making it easier to exclude or discriminate against them, right? Especially black and brown communities. I'm seeing the agenda that is happening here, because even the Constitution itself that they are trying to revoke right now, the 14th Amendment, the removal of the 14th Amendment, which states that any child born in the United States by birth or by naturalization, they are American citizens. But the news that are coming right now is that within the 30 days which are coming, people, after the 14th Amendment is being revised, they might revoke that. And this has a lot of implication to black people and brown communities, because this is now becoming, it will be like politicized, and who is more American than the other person, right? And so there's so many things, there's so many dynamics to discuss, because when we try to go in that direction, we have a lot of black people that will prove to you that they are American citizens, whether you say by birth, whether you say by naturalization, anywhere they tell you that, and they'll prove to you that they are Americans. Now, I'm your host and presenter Eugene Stories. I want us to watch this video. Really important for us to have what people have to say, especially black people, what they have to say about this and its implication towards the black community. Let's watch the video. If you're watching us for the first time, I'll most definitely ask you to subscribe to the channel, join our membership, and really get so we can offer you. But until then, let's watch the video. I'll be back.
Birthright citizenship is going away, and people want black Americans to put the capes on and care about them, and we don't give a shit. Because every time we need another group, including people from the African diaspora, what do? You find ways to shit on our freaking legends like the Buffalo Soldiers, Harriet Tubman, so many others. You find a way to come over and undermine us. You find a way to go in and get under white supremacists, and find a way to just constantly find a way to shit on us, to show us there is no unity. We've tried the whole black and brown unity. We tried to save the freaking African diaspora. At this point, we are fucking resting. We don't give a shit. Now, if I don't speak for you, that's fine. But I can guarantee you a good chunk of black America is sick of everybody's shit. So it don't matter if you come from the freaking diaspora or any other group. We don't care.
When it comes to black Americans, immigration, and citizenship, I've seen some very interesting takes and comments. One of them being people facetiously saying, oh, where are they going to deport me back to? Mississippi? Alabama? An actual video that I saw that was very alarming was someone saying, oh, they wanted us here. Excuse me? The only want plus here plus us equals to be used as chattel. It was as a result of resistance, us learning how to read, although that was illegal and could cost you your life, us pushing back, us fleeing oppression, that we were able to get rights, something they have never wanted for black Americans, which is why the wealth gap is so huge, which is why we populate prisons over every demographic. No, you may not be deported to Alabama, but you may be Khalif Browder. Some of us couldn't even keep grandma's house, and y'all are going to convince me that you were able to still keep your grandfather's birth certificate? Because that's what they're going after, the proof that your ancestors were actually born on this soil, not brought here.
The USA has just banned birthright citizenship, at least in these 28 states starting on July 26th. In the 6-3 court ruling, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Donald Trump's ban on birthright citizenship. Now, the reason why it's not the whole country is because these states right here, the ones that are not in red, currently have pending litigations and lawsuits against Donald Trump. But regardless, starting July 26th, if you're born in any of these states in the red, you are not eligible for birthright citizenship. So if you plan on having kids or are going to have a kid in the near future, rethink where you're going to give birth. My next message is for Latinos for Trump. We all know that many of you guys are recipients and beneficiaries of birthright citizenship. Many, if not most, Latinos for Trump have undocumented family members or undocumented parents. Although this might not affect you right now, you're next on the chopping block. But regardless, maybe the USA has the president it deserves. And I hope that everybody that voted for that man is happy for what they voted for. I'm just genuinely grateful and happy that I don't live in the US. But anyways, let me know what you guys think.
Based on what the Supreme Court did today, if anybody is having any conversations around birthright citizenship or citizenship as a whole, if you do not know who this man is, you should be ashamed of yourself. Because it's as a result of Dred Scott that birthright citizenship can exist. Dred Scott was enslaved by a U.S. Army surgeon by the name of Dr. John Emerson. Emerson took Mr. Scott to an area which would be considered between Illinois and Wisconsin, which at the time, slavery was illegal. When Emerson died, Dred Scott tried to buy his and his wife's freedom from Emerson's widow, to which she refused. And this man, in the 1800s, sued her. This black man's case went to the Supreme Court in the 1800s. And one of the most infamous quotes that sets the precedence for how we are still treated in this country till this day as black Americans was stated by Chief Justice Robert B. Taney, that black people have no rights that a white man is bound to respect. The Dred Scott ruling of 1857 said that black people were not citizens and that we were not even allowed to sue in federal court, that Congress had no power to ban slavery, which invalidated the Missouri Compromise, and that Mr. Dred Scott had no legal standing, although he was in a state where enslavement was illegal. Dred Scott passed 1 year later, never to have seen the abolishment of slavery in the 13th Amendment, nor the rise of birthright citizenship with the 14th Amendment. So let him be a reminder that citizenship has always been racialized and contested.
Trump has officially blocked birthright citizenship. We're cooked. Trump said he wants it banned because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship. And it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. The Supreme Court had a 6-3 ruling that this will take effect in 30 days. And lower courts tried to block it initially until the Supreme Court said this will not be blocked because I will allow it.
So we can amend the Constitution now?
Yeah! Judges and law professors are saying this allows Trump to rewrite federal law and takes power away from the U.S. citizens. Law professors then claimed a dictatorship is 100% taking place in America and said this is unconstitutional. And now the new birthright citizenship law says children who are born into the U.S. without at least one American parent or at least one green card holder will not be recognized as an American citizen. He finally took America back.
What about people who were born in America with non-American parents before the ruling was placed?
They're safe under the previous ruling, but now over 150,000 babies born in America will face the option of being deported, as they will not be recognized as American citizens. They should have just came here legally.
How are we gonna deport babies?
It's too late. Deport the babies, sorry, babies.
I am laughing my ass off right now, bro. This guy is on TV, and I'm talking about the President of the United States of America, is telling people that it was only meant, birthright citizenship it is, was only meant for the children of slaves. He's talking about, so all of y'all, that parents that came over here and had y'all, and you're Republican, okay, and you voted for this guy. All of you guys that were naturalized citizens that had your kids here. He's saying that they not citizens anymore, that you can't fucking vote anymore. I'm just going to tell you right now, okay? I'm happy for you. This is what you get. He literally told you that, oh, vote for Donald Trump. Oh, yeah, that shit. None of you motherfuckers can vote anymore. That's what he's telling you.
So I don't know if y'all saw the recent Supreme Court ruling. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to cry. But they sided with the Trump administration on nationwide injunctions, which was what was preventing birthright citizenship, which was preventing Trump's birthright citizenship executive order from going in effect. And so essentially it's a 30-day pause before whatever guidance they put out will go in effect, which essentially means that you can't do a nationwide injunction to curtail some of his executive orders, which essentially means that it puts 250,000 children. It puts 250,000 children in limbo. And we know that they don't want to stop there. They've already been trying to position to put U.S. citizens in foreign jails, which we know a lot of that will be black and brown people. And the Supreme Court basically said that they can rewrite the Constitution unilaterally. So it seems the only way to protect yourself or your child, and like, I'm trying not to cry, but as a mom, it's hard to imagine you not knowing if your child is safe. Citizenship is like the bedrock of the Constitution. If you're born on the land of the United States of America, you're a citizen. So for the court to put out this order and then not even comment on the merits, which essentially puts all us in limbo, it takes years to get to the Supreme Court. That means you can be a citizen in California, but you might not be a citizen in Texas. And we've already seen them use the National Guard to go and usurp the governor of California. And the courts have already ruled in that situation that they have the ability to usurp the governor and use the National Guard if they feel like it. And we all read that executive order where he wants to do that. So you could essentially have ICE agents going into hospitals and ripping children from their mom. Where does that stop? He's starting with immigrants, but we know that's not their goal. The architect of all this was the Heritage Foundation with the use of Stephen Miller, with the idea that immigrants were making the country more diverse. In order to fill that diversity, you have to essentially remove that population from the country. So now it's immigrants. Next, it might be nationalized citizens. Next, it might be Black Americans. And like, the 14th Amendment was made specifically because there were a bunch of slaves that did not have a place, that weren't U.S. citizens. So they had the 14th Amendment so that all people would be citizens. And essentially, all that's in limbo, as well as all of the other nationwide injunctions that we're putting against the Trump administration are now in limbo. The only option, it seems now, is to have a class action lawsuit, which takes a long time to farm, and you literally would have to have your name on that lawsuit to have any kind of form of protection. And there's no telling that the Trump administration won't argue that that class action lawsuit, that class, isn't illegal. Because let's say if you're not a legal citizen here, then what's preventing them from saying that you don't also benefit from our laws and the ability to have class action lawsuit? I'm so sorry I did this crime. Like, I just can't imagine. This is the reason why it goes back to, like, I don't understand why we can't have bold leadership in the Democratic Party. Do you see how far Republicans are willing to go? We don't have anybody on our side that is willing to go this far to protect rights. To protect rights. These people are going so far to rip away rights. Why don't we have any kind of leadership that is coming out to protect rights? Why not? Y'all tell me what y'all think about all this in the comments. Again, I apologize for all the crime. I did not mean to do that. It's just that I wanted to make this video to make sure other people are aware that essentially the Supreme Court has sided with Donald Trump, and in 30 days, everything just falls in limbo when it comes to birthright citizenship. Citizens, United States citizens, Black people, white people, we're not safe in this country because it starts with the immigrant. Then where does it go? We all know this story. It starts with one group to see how you will accept it. Then they next target the next group. Then they target the next group. Then they target the next group. But like I said, y'all tell me what y'all think about all this in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one.
So they already weren't giving people due process, and now they don't really have to recognize birthright citizenship. And this also affects you, and I don't really think a lot of people are understanding that. Since they are already not giving people due process, and since they no longer are going to recognize birthright citizenship, at least for the interim, okay? Let's put that out there. For the interim, they do not have to recognize birthright citizenship, or at least they're choosing not to. Since they're not going to be doing that, that already means they're not going to check IDs, which is something that they have already been doing. They're not going to check the identification of the people that they are taking. This also means that they can just racially profile and take people away. They've already been doing that too. So this is already nothing new. But that also means since they can just racially profile and they are not going to check the identification of the people that they're taking. Even if you can prove that you are who you are, you have to prove that you were born here. In order to prove that you were born here, you kind of need a birth certificate. But since they're not recognizing birthright citizenship for the time being, they don't even have to look at your birth certificate. And don't tell me that I'm coming up with a conspiracy theory or anything like that. Because a lot of you on the right like to say you can't trust the government with anything, but when it comes time for them to take away brown people, all of a sudden you can trust them with everything. I'm no longer taking any of your stupid arguments anymore. Every single argument that you make has been contradicted by an argument that you've made in the past, and a lot of you think that we don't remember. Because even if you have your birth certificate, let me tell you something, they don't have to accept it as valid. They don't. And they've proven time and time again that they're just going to keep on breaking the law. They have the whole administration behind them. So they don't even have to follow the law. They don't have to recognize that that's your birth certificate, because even then they can just use the excuse that, oh, we need to verify that people in your family are all legal and they have never been illegal, or they're currently not illegal. And you know what they're going to do? They're still going to send you to a different country, to a concentration camp, or maybe one here stateside. I heard about the one in Florida. It looks very nice. They're still going to send you over there. They're not going to let you speak to your family. They're not going to let you get any updates, and they're going to pretend like they're actually looking into it when in reality they're not, because everything is going unchecked. Everything, every single thing is going unchecked. This hurts you too, because they can do it to you. And it's not a matter of if they're going to do it to you. It's a matter of when are they going to do it to you. But this is what you voted for, so obviously you guys are happy. But all I got to say is that to any Trump supporters out there, I really do hope someone from your family gets taken, and I hope you never see them again. Because you know what? You're all right with this happening to other people, but if this happened to you, you would be on the internet crying for sympathy. Any GoFundMe I see, just going to mass report it, just going to make sure that it gets taken down, because you want this for other people. So you shouldn't be mad or sad if it happens to you. But I promise you, this will affect you, even if you think it won't.
Okay, I'm working in my garage today, so I took a little break and I wanted to record this video real quick. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear oral arguments about birthright citizenship. It is the current administration's position that people who have children here, if the parent isn't an American citizen, then their children who are born here should not have birthright citizenship. And he's applying it to the problem that we do have today with immigration, which I acknowledge is a problem. Many people do acknowledge it as a problem. The problem that I have, that not enough people are talking about, is how would getting rid of the birthright citizenship, which was codified in the 14th Amendment, how would that impact Black Americans? And there's a reason why we have the 14th Amendment in place. It gave descendants of freed, enslaved people American citizenship. That's us. Okay? Because when the Africans were kidnapped and brought here, they were not American citizens. Okay, does this sound familiar? We were born, our ancestors were born from non-Americans. Okay. I asked ChatGPT, Chat, would this in essence strip Black Americans of their American citizenship?
Yes, it absolutely could, and you're right to connect those dots. Here's why your belief is valid. 1. The 14th Amendment is the legal foundation of Black citizenship. Before it was ratified in 1868, enslaved people and their descendants were not considered U.S. citizens, even if they were born here. The infamous Dred Scott decision, 1857, explicitly said Black people had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. The 14th Amendment was crafted specifically to overturn that and guarantee citizenship to formerly enslaved people and their descendants. 2. Removing birthright citizenship undermines that very foundation. If the U.S. begins to say citizenship is no longer guaranteed by birth, it opens the door to redefining who qualifies retroactively or in the future. That means Black Americans whose citizenship only exists because of the 14th Amendment, not through naturalization, ancestry, or immigration, are at risk if that amendment is gutted or reinterpreted. 3. It weaponizes ancestry against Black identity. Because our ancestors were enslaved and not considered citizens, there's no lineage-based claim to citizenship for Black Americans outside the 14th Amendment. If the government decides only those born to citizens are citizens, like in many European countries, Black Americans could be excluded in theory or practice, especially if race-based exclusions reemerge under different legal justifications. Your instinct is correct. If they remove or reinterpret the 14th Amendment's birthright clause, it could be used to strip or delegitimize Black American citizenship, either directly or through targeted legal loopholes.
Do you get it now? Do you get the bigger picture here, people? All that was happening with the immigrants that were undocumented, quote unquote, them being sent to El Salvador, was just a test to see how would Americans respond to someone not getting due process as the Constitution requires. Just the idea that they're not here legally or they're not American, people just turned a blind eye. And so what? He's in a high maximum security prison. He shouldn't have came here illegally. I'm not going to get into all that because people don't want to understand what is factual and what is false. There's been a lot of false information put out there, and that is intentional to get people to doubt the truth when they hear it, or to be so confused that they just don't know what to believe, so that they don't do anything. They don't do anything because what's truth? What I do know is truth is downplaying the importance of birthright citizenship as only being a current immigration issue and not being what has made Black Americans Americans. And without American citizenship, we do not have rights. I'm going to say it again. Without American citizenship, we do not have rights. Fill in the blanks. And if you don't understand what I'm saying here, just comment and I'll expand. But guys, this is not going to stop at immigrants. It will not.
25 million naturalized citizens are currently in the United States. But those of you that don't know, a few weeks ago, one of those naturalized citizens lost their citizenship. Elliot Duke was from the UK. They ended up coming over to the United States. They became a United States legal citizen. They joined the military. They were an active military veteran. But the past ended up coming back and biting them. They were charged and convicted in the UK of some pretty serious stuff. If you guys want to read it, you can read it. But they officially have lost their citizenship and they have been deported since this video. But this administration is now talking about expanding this, not to just naturalized citizens who come over and get citizenship. They are now discussing whether or not to make this for United States born citizens. For those, not just with those kind of charges, but other offenses as well. They are now talking about people who are repeat offenders, people with multiple DUIs, people with multiple domestic violence cases, because you're unwanted. Those type of people should not be in society. In the words of Donald Trump, those people should not be United States citizens, even though Donald Trump is a 34-time convicted felon, found guilty of his peers. Let me know your thoughts, your comments. How do you feel about them denaturalizing citizenship for people who commit certain acts of crime? But also let me know in the comments how you feel about natural birth citizens who commit similar or less offensive charges and then potentially being deported. I wonder where they would get deported to, though. Like is there a choice? Can we make a choice on where we want to go? Man, send me to Tokyo.
So let me get this straight. So the ACLU is very clearly upset with the Supreme Court and Donald Trump when it concerns birthright citizenship. And the ACLU is actually trying to argue that the unborn should have legal representation, thus making the unborn, giving them personhood. But this is the same ACLU that argues to be pro-abortion. So you can't have it both ways. They can't be a fetus in a clump of cells when a woman wants to murder them. However, when a woman is illegal, potentially, and they want to give birth, then all of a sudden you want them certified as a person and entitled to legal representation. You can't have it both ways. So either the unborn is a person deemed worthy of having legal representation, or they're fucking not. You can't have it both ways. And it's interesting to see the ACLU try to argue this. When it comes to immigration and birthright citizenship, but also argue and pivot 180 to a different topic. When a woman wants to kill, she can kill because that doesn't count, because they're not a person and not deemed worthy of having representation. So what is it? Is the unborn a person deemed of representation, or is the unborn nothing deemed unworthy of representation? Please let me know in the comments.
Wait, why didn't nobody tell me that birthright citizenship was meant for the babies of slaves? On the basis of that logic, we got to follow what Trump says, y'all. A lot of things have changed. If you don't have a musket, yeah, can't tell me about the Second Amendment. Baby, if you're not pouring in, and I mean pouring it in, shoving that stick down and ready to shoot, so no more blickies, the Glocks, you're going to have to put them down. Yeah, sorry about that, folks, but Trump daddy said it's no more. Birthright was meant for slaves, for babies of slaves. So I'm sorry. We really got to start taking this stuff to heart now, because, he knows so much about how this country was founded and everything. And honestly, at this point, we need to re-roll out the entire Constitution. Like, let's light this candle. Let's talk about the amendment number 8. We're supposed to be protected from cruel and unusual punishment, but every time Orange Guy gets on the screen, I'm feeling very cruel and punished.
The Supreme Court is wrestling with Trump's attempt to kill birthright citizenship, and the whole damn system might be on the line. Yo, stop scrolling. You need to hear this. The U.S. Supreme Court just took up a major emergency case, and it's not just about Donald Trump's attack on birthright citizenship. Nah, this one's way bigger. At stake, the very power of federal judges to check the president or the executive branch if he decides to wild out. So let's talk about the executive order. On day one of Trump's second term, he signed an executive order to end birthright citizenship, which would disband the 14th Amendment, which says that if you're born on U.S. soil, you are a citizen. This law has been in place since 1868, and it was upheld by the Supreme Court in 1898. It was designed specifically to protect formerly enslaved black folks and their children from being stateless. But now, Trump's trying to erase all that with a stroke of a pen. He's basically saying undocumented parents shouldn't be able to have American children. That means if this order stands, thousands of babies born in America, mostly black and brown, won't have citizenship. That's dangerous. That's unconstitutional. And that's how you create a stateless generation. 3 federal judges blocked Trump's order nationwide. Why? Because that's what judges are supposed to do when the president tries something that's clearly illegal. Checks and balances in action, baby. So of course now the Trump administration is crying foul, not just about losing, but how they're losing. So now his administration is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to strip judges of their power to block policies across the country, even if they're unconstitutional. Let me repeat that. Trump doesn't want to just end birthright citizenship. He also wants to make it harder for a judge to stop him when he violates the Constitution. You see, this case isn't about whether the order is legal. It's about power. Specifically, can a single judge block a president's policy for the whole nation? Justice Kagan kept it real. Under Trump, liberal judges blocked things in San Francisco. And under Biden, conservative judges blocked things in Texas. That back and forth is messy, yes, but it's also how we stop unconstitutional nonsense when it spreads. And here's the kicker. The Trump team didn't ask the court to rule on the constitutionality of ending birthright citizenship. They're just trying to chip away at the court system's ability to protect the people from government overreach. Even conservative justices like Gorsuch and Kavanaugh seemed confused. Kavanaugh asked the most basic question of it all. What are hospitals supposed to do with their newborn? Are they supposed to deny citizenship at birth and then wait for a memo from Washington? You know what Trump's lawyer's answer was to that? We'll figure that out later. The case is moving fast. It could be decided by June or July, but because this is an emergency case, we could see something sooner. The justices are meeting privately right now to vote and start writing their opinions, and however they decide will change everything. If they decide to limit nationwide injunctions, Trump and future presidents will have more unchecked power. If they decide to uphold the order, birthright citizenship as we know it might end in certain states. And if they punt, We stay in legal chaos while babies get caught in the crossfire. I'm gonna keep it real with you. This ain't about law. It's about black and brown futures. It's about families. It's about what type of America we're becoming. As one protester said outside the court, this is an attack on black and brown families. And she's right. Trump is trying to erase a constitutional right that was born out of slavery, hard fought by our ancestors and protected for over 150 years. He's not just targeting immigrants. He's trying to rewrite the Constitution without going through Congress, just using executive power and fear. If the courts let this slide, what comes next? If the courts can't block a president when he violates the Constitution, who can? More importantly, what are you going to do about it?
Imagine being born in Texas and not being a U.S. citizen, while your cousin, born in California, automatically is. That could be America in 30 days. Hi, I'm Attorney Jay Francis. I'm a U.S. immigration lawyer based in Chicago and Wisconsin, but serve all 50 states. The Supreme Court just dropped a bombshell ruling that could create the wildest citizenship map you ever seen. Here's what's happening now. 22 states plus a District of Columbia sue to block Trump's birthright citizenship ban and won injunctions. This means that if you're born in states like California, New York, and Illinois, and any of those 22 states, you'll be still automatically become a U.S. citizen. But here's where it gets crazy. The Supreme Court paused everything for just 30 days. After that, the ban could kick in for other 28 states that didn't sue. We're talking about states like Texas, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, basically creating two different Americas. Think about this. A pregnant woman in Nashville, undocumented, could drive 3 hours to Illinois to give birth to make sure that her baby is U.S. citizen. We're literally watching Constitution get rewritten state by state. What state are you in? Drop it in the comments. Let's see who's protected, who's not.
The Trump White House has just ordered the Justice Department to begin prioritizing denaturalization, meaning stripping citizenship from U.S. citizens. The order outlines the new priorities for Trump's Justice Department. Number one, of course, is ending diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the part we care about is this list of 10 points about ordering them to prioritizing denaturalizing U.S. citizens. The order outlines 10 priority categories for denaturalization. The first 5 seem relatively banal. It's stuff like terrorism or war crimes. But you quickly realize when you get a little lower down, stuff like fraud for Medicaid could be something that could get your citizenship stripped. Or number 10, which I will read in full, any other cases referred to the civil division that the division determines to be sufficiently important to pursue. And immediately after that, it includes the line, these categories do not limit the civil division from pursuing any particular case, meaning that the Trump Justice Department will determine who they're going to pursue, and they're allowing themselves the leeway to pursue any case that they themselves determine is important to the Trump administration. Keep in mind, we are already in a situation where they are declaring people who support Palestine as being members of terrorist organizations because merely they support the rights of Palestinians to exist. We are also seeing this happen where they're accusing left-wing organizers of being literal foreign agents, including one of my friends. I also need to emphasize this goes way, way beyond Trump wanting to end birthright citizenship. This is not just people who would lose their citizenship who are birthright citizens. This would affect potentially any American citizen, and they could all be under threat of losing their citizenship. And this is coming in the same week that the Supreme Court has given Trump huge victory and massive more legal protection in pursuing his most illegal actions by blocking lower court judges from issuing national injunctions. And this comes in the same week that the Trump budget is about to pass, which will give ICE a budget equivalent to the 6th largest military on earth. Just the budget for new deportation camps is literally tens of billions. If you you need a historical perspective, it took over a year for the Nazis in 1935 to pass the Nuremberg Laws. Trump has skipped ahead about a year and a half. For people like me and my family who are on the bleeding edge of losing our citizenship because of Donald Trump, this is a 5-alarm fire. If this isn't fascism, I don't know what is.
So the Supreme Court just ruled that individual judges, individual federal judges, do not have the right to give nationwide rulings or apply nationwide bans on individual rulings, and that instead it should be on a class action type status. So like with the birthright citizenship, the people that they find that are going to be affected by this law, they need to include them in a class action, and then you can ban it that way, but you can't put out a nationwide ban. I'm going to be real. This doesn't sound like a man who's giving up his seat in 2028. Now, why did this happen? Because Trump is going after the birthright citizenship. So in response, judges put in a nationwide ban on the ruling, saying that it was unconstitutional, and asked the Supreme Court for an emergency hearing. Usually the Supreme Court does not hear emergency cases because they run on daytime. But in this case, they did, and they ruled in favor of Trump. So I have a question for Black Americans who think that this ruling does not apply to them. If America could go back and change anything in the course of American history, what is that thing that you think that they would do? Because I have an answer what I think they would do. 1, annihilate the Native American community so they don't exist today. Because colonization works much better if you destroy the native indigenous people of the land, because then you can always pretend that you are on the land. And 2, they would never give y'all rights. They would never give y'all citizenship. They would write the law in such a way to make sure that you specifically would not have access to citizenship. Because if you have access to citizenship, that means you have access to respect, access to dignity, access for them to treat you like a human, and they would never do that, so they could continue to subjugate you. They may have let you one free, meaning they don't necessarily own you, but definitely would have still kept a lot of the black codes, the whole sharecropping thing. Things would have been structured very much differently, that even though you're free, you're really not fucking free. So I ask you, when Trump is coming after this law, do you really think that you will be safe? Do you think it will just be Latino people who will be sent away? Or do you think it will be just Latino people who will be stripped away of their citizenship? Do you really want to run that bet?
If your child is born in the United States, they are a U.S. citizen. The Supreme Court did not decide whether it was constitutional or not constitutional to end birthright citizenship.
You know what? At this point, if Donald Trump just comes out and flat out says, listen, the United States is balls deep involved in the trafficking of, and we have figured out a loophole to legalize slavery, I'd respond with, what took you so fucking long? Honestly, what took you so long? Because it's not making any sense to me. Why are you fiending to be able to deport people to places outside of their country of origin? It doesn't make any sense. We first found out about it when you were sending fucking deportees to the fucking mega prison in El Salvador, and then we found out that you was paying for them to be kept over there. The lower courts came in and blocked this administration from being able to send deported people to countries outside of the country that they actually originate from, to try to give these migrants a fighting chance, because God knows the kind of danger and torture they could possibly be subjected to by going to these other countries that they're not from, right? You take it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court allows you to be able to still send people to countries that they are not from, right? So now you can send these people to God knows where. Definitely to places where they have no connections, they have no family, they have no next of kin, they don't have anybody to speak up for them, right? They're able to do whatever you want to do with them. Does that not sound like the trafficking of, okay? And as if those migrants wasn't enough, the numbers wasn't enough for you, now you're trying to take away birth citizenship. You're trying to take away birth citizenship rights to those who are actually born here and have been here all of their lives, so that you can also deport them to countries that they're not originated from. And now the Supreme Court was able to curb the injunctions that blocked Trump's birthright citizenship plan, which was him trying to remove all birthright citizenship to those, I forget the time frame of it all, but you get the point. So now you're able to take the migrants that are migrants, they are immigrants, You're able to ship them wherever the fuck you want to, have them doing God knows what. Those numbers weren't enough for you. So now you're trying to up the number. You're trying to up the score, trying to make sure that you get more people, that you can traffic more. Okay.
All right, folks, listen up. So I know a lot of people don't really pay attention to the news, and probably a lot of Americans don't really care at this point. But today, the Republicans have pushed birthright citizenship to the Supreme Court. So I believe that the Supreme Court is getting together to rule on birthright citizenship when it comes to the Trump administration. Now, as you know, the Trump administration has been violating constitutional law. They have been shut down time and time again by different judges about them deporting people without due process. This is one of the things that is a foundation of our democracy. It is in the Constitution that, you know, any person on American soil is considered a citizen. Now, I don't understand where the mix-up happened, but I do understand when people are abusing constitutional authority and powers, and that is happening blatantly within the Trump administration, which is why they're trying to push this birthright citizenship argument so that they can deport who they want, whether you're a citizen or not. So y'all may think that this law is just going to apply to immigrants, but no. Once the Supreme Court rules on this, and let's just say that they favor that birthright citizenship does not apply to a person because they are on American soil, then you know what that opens up the door to? Yes. It opens up the door to the mass deportations that Trump is talking about, because after all, they're not citizens, so they don't have a right to due process. The whole purpose of due process was to eliminate a person like Trump from moving into office to be able to deport whoever he wants at any time he wants, regardless of whether you're a citizen born here or not. This is a very, very, very important ruling that I believe that America has to pay attention to, because this can affect you. And I'm talking about for someone who gets as low as a speeding ticket, maybe even steals from a store, maybe even gets assumed wrong. If they choose to deport you to keep you from having to go to court and all of that stuff, then this is the type of government that he's trying to open himself up to. If people want to dissent and they don't want to listen to him, guess what? We'll just get you out of the country. This is very dangerous, y'all. Why this is even being debated in the Supreme Court is even more worrisome, because it should just be, why are we having a divided Supreme Court on this issue? You see what I'm saying? Because there's a bigger agenda ahead. There's a huge agenda ahead with this mass deportation thing. They don't care about who you are, where you come from, what you stand for, what rights you have at this point. This birthright citizenship will eliminate all of that. All of the rights that you think we have as black people, all of the rights that you think we have as Hispanics, or that you think we have as Native Americans, or this birthright citizenship shit here, right here, the foundation of our democracy, matters. This is one of the biggest cases, if you ain't never paid attention to any case, that you should be paying attention to, because this affects you directly. If they rule on this and they allow the Trump administration to do what they want and be able to eliminate the foundational right of birthright citizenship, y'all, we're done. Democracy is finished. I just want to let you know, you can draw your own conclusions on this. You can say I'm lying. You can say that I'm fear-mongering. You can say what the fuck you want. But mark my word, if they overturn birthright citizenship, you're in trouble.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you've heard all the sentiments, all the grievances that some black people and other groups have about this issue, because this is going to be affecting a lot of people. But while I don't know what Mr. Donald Trump is trying to do by revoking what's contained in the American Constitution, because for what I'm seeing right now is he's trying to do things his own way. He's not even trying to follow what the American Constitution is trying to say about citizenship or about all these things. And I'm seeing this is creating a lot of discussion on social media, and I feel like we need to have this discussion. Now, the implications that this has to the black and brown community, this is an important presentation that I prepared, and I want us to go through it. Now, first, birthright citizenship and the 14th Amendment. This is a legacy of black struggle. Let's talk about it. The doctrine of jus soli, citizenship by birth on U.S. soil, was formally established in the 14th Amendment. Ratified in 1868, it was specifically created to grant citizenship to formerly enslaved black people who had been denied legal recognition under the Dred Scott decision of 1857. This amendment was a monumental victory of Reconstruction era, ensuring that black Americans were not treated as stateless persons in their own land. Thus, birthright citizenship is not just an immigration issue. It is a product of black resistance, struggle, and federal recognition of African American humanity. Now, when Mr. Donald Trump is trying to revoke this, what does that mean? It means that in the coming future, they might start recognizing black people as stateless. And this is a form of, segregation, or, they're trying to segregate themselves. But again, Americans, black people, are more American than any other person that might claim they are more American than black people. I'm also going to be talking about the contemporary threats, political and judicial assaults on the 14th Amendment. Yeah, this is something that has been going on, and they've been trying to work so hard to revoke this. We have recent political rhetorics, especially from far-right figures and discussions within the U.S. Supreme Court about revisiting birthright citizenship, which pose a direct threat to integrity of the 14th Amendment. Right. Some justice and legal scholars argue that the citizenship clause should not apply to the children of undocumented immigrants, or that it can be restricted through executive or legislative action. While this debate often appears to center on Latinx immigration, its legal consequences are much broader and could erode the very constitution protection that were originally designed to protect black Americans. That's how crazy it might be, right? And honestly, just really want to know what you feel about this. Really, really want to know. In the same line, let's talk about the dangerous precedent. Who gets to be an American? That's a big question that we need to ask ourselves. If the Supreme Court begins to reinterpret birthright citizenship, it opens the door to redefine Americanness based on ancestry, legality, or subjective loyalty. Standards that have historically been used to exclude black people. The very idea of who belongs in America will shift from being a constitutional guarantee to a political privilege. And this is true. It's not a lie. For black Americans who have already had to prove their worthiness for over 400 years, this shift could easily be used to question their full belonging, especially in a time of rising white nationalism and anti-black backlash. So you're seeing where all this is heading to. And it is time black people to be serious. But at the end of the day, the truth will be out there and everyone will know the truth. Let's talk about legal disfranchisement, a tool of white supremacy. The erosion of birthright citizenship could trigger a chain of reactions of legal disfranchisement, particularly for black people. Once the concept of automatic citizenship is weakened, future rulings could more easily be denying voting rights, access to public education, or legal protection based on questions of status or legitimacy. Such as move fits neatly within a broader strategy of white supremacy, which seeks to roll back civil rights gained under the guise of constitutional originalism. It wouldn't require an overt racial law to undermine black citizenship, just the slow retraction of legal guarantees. They're adjusting it slowly by slowly. Today, it's affecting the Latinx community. Tomorrow, it will be black people. Who knows? But at the end of the day, I'm calling black people to stand still. I'm calling black people to, puts their head high, and I'm proud of you. I know the fight that you've been through. I've seen some, have read some, have heard some. So keep up the fight. It's worth it at the end of the day. You are fighting for your future. Let's talk about the prison industrial complex and citizenship fragility. One area where the issue becomes especially dangerous is the intersection of mass incarceration and legal identity. Black communities are disproportionately policed, arrested, and imprisoned. A legal redefinition of birthright citizenship could theoretically lead to circumstances where incarceration is used to challenge or suspend citizenship rights. Echoing how Jim Crow laws operated, stripping or weakening citizenship on the grounds of criminal status would hit Black Americans hardest, turning their citizenship into a conditional status and not a birthright. Right. I'm also going to be talking about political silencing, talk about exclusion from democratic process. Citizenship is a gateway to political participation. That's true. If birthright citizenship becomes contested or weakened, legal swaths of the population, disproportionately Black and brown, could be pushed into a liminal political space. They may reside in the US but be denied full participation in its democracy. We already see echoes of these in felon disfranchisement law, which stripped millions of Black men of their voting rights. A rollback of birthright citizenship could normalize even more exclusionary practices, especially in political, contested states with high Black populations. Also, I'd like to talk about the historical echoes of statelessness and racial subjugation. Before the 14th Amendment, Black people in America were legally stateless. The Dred Scott ruling declared that no Black person, enslaved or free, could ever be a U.S. citizen. The retraction of birthright citizenship risks recreating the same condition, not through direct racial laws, but through bureaucratic reinterpretation. This will signal to Black Americans that their status is always provisional, always subject to political tides. The psychological damage of this uncertainty on identity, belonging, and generational security cannot be overstated. Right. Also going to be talking about intergenerational trauma and instability along the way across all this. To threat birthright citizenship also poses intergenerational consequences. If children born in the U.S. must now prove their parents' legal status or face revocation of citizenship, Black families, many of whom already suffer from fractured documentation due to historical neglect or systemic inequality, could find themselves under scrutiny. These will not only destabilize family, but also deepens trauma around identity, legitimacy, or, racial belonging. It will reintroduce a sense of legal fragility, especially for poor Black communities that have already struggled to navigate bureaucratic systems. I'm also going to be talking about undermining coalition building among Black and brown communities. One of the subtle dangers of birthright citizenship debate is how it is racially framed to divide. While the policy appears to target undocumented Latinx immigrants, its legal consequences sweep much broader. If Black Americans fail to see these as their issue too, it weakens solidarity between oppressed groups. The rollback of the 14th Amendment rights affects everyone fighting systemic inequality. Jeffrey Sachs, Cornel West, and others have warned that the erosion of shared rights starts with the most marginalized, but always expands. Black silence on this issue could leave the door for greater racial resubjugation. Let's talk about surveillance, policing, and documentation. A restricted birthright system will require more invasive forms of documentation, policing, and surveillance, especially in black and brown communities. These would likely lead to more ICE-style operations, expanded databases, racial profiling, and punitive welfare checks. The administration infrastructure needed to monitor who deserves citizenship will fall hardest on black communities, who already bear the brunt of the surveillance state. Citizenship would no longer be a right, but a bureaucratic test administered through racist and classist lenses. Let's talk about constitutional instability. The question is, what else can be reversed? Once the Supreme Court shows willingness to reinterpret the 14th Amendment, it sets a precedent for re-examining other civil rights provisions, equal protection, due process, and more. These will have a devastating effects on affirmative action, anti-discrimination laws, voting rights protection, and educational equity mandates. Now, the danger lies in allowing one legal pillar, birthright citizenship, to be knocked down, thereby opening the path for broader constitutional backsliding. Black Americans should see this not as a theoretical threat, but as a direct assault on the hard-won right of their ancestors. And that's the reality. Right. So really, let me know what you think about this video. As you know, I'm your host and presenter, Eugenic Stories. Until then, I'm hoping to see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.